Hey everybody, Rosematter here, and welcome to part 32 of my Umineko Let's Play. In the last episode, we had a couple more sacrifices with Kraus and Natsui being killed seemingly impossibly while they were locked up in the guest house, but I have my suspicions that I don't think the witch Eva did this. I think the actual Eva did this, given the circumstances. And we're just seeing what the game wants us to see, and make it think it's something that's a magical cause, but I'm starting to lean more on the human Eva has definitely more to do with this than it appears. And also, Beato, surprisingly, whether she's just trying to earn brownie points to get Badler to, accept her and want to speak with her again, actually offered to take George to Shannon and resurrect her and have them be together again, which is very strange. So whether that's something that's actually going to happen or if Beato is luring George out of the guest house where, he can be killed, well, we have yet to see that. So I'm excited to see whether that's actually going to happen. And I have a feeling George is not going to be of this earth much longer because he's being lured out of the supposed safe space. So anyway, we're going to get back into it. We're going to see what happens next. Beato and George could be seen in the parlor of the mansion. George was kneeling near Shannon's body as though praying. His face was sincerity itself, and there was even sweat on his forehead. However, Beato was the same. Now that she had handed her name over, most of her previous power had been lost. Of course, she still had more than enough power to be called a witch, but compared to the past, it was a very faint thing.
いいぞ、声をかけるな。手で触れるな。心の声で呼べよ。心の手で求めよ。そなたの強き思いだけがシャノンの失われた魂に
It's weird to see how much
わらわの魔法を届かせる。
Beato couldn't stand Shannon, and yet now she's helping her. George maintained a single-minded focus. He kept frantically yelling inside his heart, trying to call back the soul of the person he loved. He strongly envisioned his soul leaving his body and searching for her as she wandered through hell. I hate that she has to be in hell. Why? That seems so unfair. Beato turned that strong force into magical power, supplementing her own magic. It was magic that, in the past, she could have performed easily without anyone's help. But now, if she didn't rely on someone's help, she wouldn't be able to finish the chant, much less succeed.
数百年近くも忘れておったわ。魔法と反言とはこんなにも辛い魔法であったか。
An even more strained expression than George's had risen to Beato's face. She was still forgetting this, but the magic to revive a life is fundamentally the ultimate hidden art that Eva-trice figured out pretty quickly. It was her previous magical power, giving her the ability to use that magic over and over with a snap of her fingers, that was abnormal. Therefore, the heavy burden to her body and mind was, by rights, absolutely to be expected.
しかし、こやつめの力、魔法を知らぬというのにかなりのもの。なるほど。さすがは金蔵の孫と言ったとこ。
Yeah, it does seem, I think I mentioned it in the last episode, it seems like all of the kids, or all the people related to Kinzo, do seem to have some sort of latent magical abilities. The strong power pouring from George was even large enough to pass as magical power. Would that be crazy if everybody got magical powers at the end? At first, Beato thought it was due to the blood of the mage Kinzo. However, that was probably wrong. She had a feeling the Badler had taught her that. George's power to feel sorrow for the death of his loved one arose from the way he had tried his hardest throughout his life, from the warm times spent together with Shannon, and from the size of their shared dream, promising each other their futures. Do humans really live this seriously during their one single life? Of course they do. To her, a life didn't mean anything more than the difference between the top and bottom of an Othello piece. The black represented death, and she thought all you had to do was flip it over again and make it white. However, it was just like that broken vase. To humans in a world without magic, where they can never return it to its original form, it is very, very natural for them to bet all their body and soul on that single life.
生死すら自在にする無限の魔女、死の山さえ越えられぬ有限の人間に劣ることもあるというのか。
Now the witch acknowledged it. He was able to hold a magical power that could not reside in witches who didn't understand the value of a life. What is this thing called the endless magic for again? Even though I call myself the Endless Witch, have I been forgetting what the endless magic means for a whole 1,000 years? She looked at George's expression again. His surging earnestness was like a lightning bolt. Right now, even if George's body was burned or smashed by a waterfall, he would probably continue to pray for his beloved without minding it, without noticing it. For the first time, she showed respect for that power. So, in that instant, all magical resistance was lost, and the enormous power of George's feelings turned into magical power in its perfect form. Oh my god, this is gonna happen! She's gonna come back! The vase was very, very beautiful, rich with history and value. Even as young as I was, it still forced me to take a deep breath when I witnessed its beauty, but that just made me want to touch it. But the vase easily fell and smashed into smithereens. Like a popped bubble, it felt as though the time when it possessed a form was just an illusion. It was that fragile, that easily lost, that life. I realized that because of my own foolish curiosity, I had done something that couldn't be taken back. No matter how much I regretted it, no matter how much I apologized, the broken vase would not return to its original form. A lost life will not return to normal, no matter what happens. I was frightened by the fact my own frivolous action, even though it had been frivolous, had stolen a life that could never be revived again. She's finally starting to understand to humans what life is. And out of pity for the lost life, I cried. Out of fear of myself, who had made it become lost, I cried even more. I was sure that grandfather would also cry at the loss of his precious vase. I was sure that all the people who thought fondly of grandfather would cry too when they saw him like that. By just that loss of a single life, the whole world would be filled with so much sadness. I cried even more about how terrible that would be. Beatrice appeared and spoke.
ならばお嬢様、この壺を魔法で蘇らせましょう。
I'm so embarrassed at the beginning of this chapter. I thought that this was Jessica or Maria.
それで皆が幸せになれるなら、壺も魔法も精霊たちも喜んでそのために力を貸し、元の姿を取り戻すでしょう。
I think that's what Virgilio was trying to say all this time, is like magic is not meant to torture humans, it's meant to help them.
さあさあ、目を閉じて私と一緒にお歌を歌いましょう。さあさあ、目を閉じてごらんなさい。そして思い出してごらんなさい。あなたがどんな姿をしていたのか。それはきっととてもとても美しい姿。どうか私にあの姿をもう一度見せておくれ。
Those words of power powerfully knocked on the door to Hades. Her previous magic had powerfully knocked on the door to Hades in the same way. However, back then, it was horribly violent and earned the displeasure of the peacefully sleeping dead. However, this time was different. It was very powerful, and it was very kind and loving. It's happening! The dead near the door opened their eyes and called out to the other dead that there was a voice calling for someone to come back. Now, will Shannon just be resurrected for a little bit, or will she actually come back? Because if we're able to resurrect people, that changes everything. If people can come back, wouldn't that mess up Eva-trice's, like, her resurrection process if her sacrifices come back to life? The sadness of that voice calling from the outside touched the hearts of the dead, and trying to respond as quickly as possible, they searched for Shannon's lost soul. And then they found it. They found the casket in which Shannon was peacefully sleeping. It truly was Shannon's soul, sleeping in the land of the dead. Inside a casket that was covered with rose petals frozen with frost, she was sleeping in peace. So, do all spirits sleep peacefully, or is it just because Shannon this time got an actual peaceful death that she is kind of at rest? Do people who die horribly, are their souls, like, tortured, or are they at peace as well? Because they talked about her being at Hades and being in hell. This doesn't seem very hellish. The dead silently lifted that casket up. While it looked like a funeral march at a glance, it had the complete opposite meaning. It was solemn but filled with joy. It reminded the long-forgotten dead that they continued to be loved even after their deaths, and gave them all a warm sense of peace. Then, as though guided by a warm light from the heavens, Shannon's body floated up out of the casket. The dead watched her go. They squinted at that warm light, giving their respect to this unknown member of the living who had continued to hold on to his love for a person, even after her death. Oh my gosh, this just gets crazier and crazier. Now we've got resurrection, too. Shannon's body was sucked into the light in the heavens and began to disappear. In the jet-black darkness of the land of the dead, a faint flickering of gold butterflies could be seen. It reminded them of the gentle stars in the night sky, which they had long forgotten. George remembered being told he must not say anything, and he hurriedly covered his mouth. However, it felt like his heart was trying to jump out of his throat, because he had seen Shannon's eyelids shake slightly. Wow, wow, wow! And then those eyelids slowly opened. Shannon's eyes were there, but they were still covered in the frost of the land of the dead. However, the warmth of the human world, no, the warmth of her loved one, who had called her soul back, slowly dissolved that frost, and her eyes gradually regained their sparkle. Then her eyes moved and recognized George. This is going to be very hard to explain to people. They're just going to believe even more that all the servants dying was all just like, that was an act. Georgie-san. As her lips shook weakly, Shannon definitely said that. The words were very faint, so much that they normally wouldn't have even reached his ears. However, George clearly heard them. He heard his loved one, his fiancée, the one he loved most, who should have been dead, call his name once again.
Shano, 僕がわかるかい?
Georgie-san, これは夢なの?
いや、これは夢じゃないよ。だからほら、つねっても冷めないよ。
Now, if Eva finds out this, she's gonna want Hideyoshi back, and Badler will want, like, this changes so much. As George said that, he softly pinched Shannon's cheek. The thing is, we know that Ava's love for Hideyoshi, she has enough love for him that I think she could bring him back. Badler and his father and Kyrie, I don't know. I don't know if the magic would be strong enough. Because it seems like it's based on how much you love the person. It dictates your strength. It was how George had always responded in the past, when Shannon had been surprised by something and asked if she was dreaming. When Shannon felt the warm touch of George's finger on her cheek, and when George realized the warmth of a living person had already returned to the cheek of his beloved, they both cried. With what words should a pair of lovers separated by death celebrate their reunion? The words of the human world are not enough to celebrate that. In short, they had no need of the words of this world. Shannon sat up, and the two of them simply wordlessly hugged each other. Shannon still didn't have much strength in her, and putting her arms around George's back took all she had, so George hugged her tightly to make up for that. To stop her from ever again going to a place beyond his reach, he hugged her so tightly, and yet so gently. Shannon's fingers curled around George's back, and on her ring finger indeed shone the engagement ring George had given her. The strong sparkle was absolutely not the sparkle of diamond alone. There was without a doubt a magical power that only the two lovers could possibly feel. It was because that strong light existed, they had been able to find her casket in the land of the dead. Beato understood. That ring, no. The couple's feelings in the form of that ring had created this miracle. In that moment, George had definitely used magic. Poor Beato is like a third wheel. She's like, I'll be over here. I'll just let you guys have your moment. Beato had done nothing more than help him along. That magic had a magical power that could only reside in those who knew of the importance of life and trying their hardest. It was the power of a miracle that an endless witch could not know, and only the power of the finite could give rise to. By now she had no choice but to accept it. She had to accept that true magic, true magical power, existed in the place farthest away from she who called herself a great witch.
Beatrice 様。
彼女が君を生き返らせてくれたんだ。
This is awkward after how cruel Beato has been to Shannon.
ありがとう、ベアトリーチェ。
わらわは何もできなかった。シャノンをよみがえらせたのは、そなたの魔力、そなたの魔法、奇跡を成し遂げる後宮の地。確かに見届けさせてもらったぞ。
ジョージさんが私を。
わらわなど足元にも及ばぬほどの凄まじき魔力であったぞ。わらわなどまだまだ見習いの域を出ぬか。今こそ身の程を知ろうぞ。
Beato staggered backwards. Her physical strength was clearly exhausted. She had humbly said that George's power alone had revived Shannon, but Beato had used all her magical and physical strength, and she reflected upon how difficult it was to revive a single one of these lives, which she had toyed with however she wanted in the past. The couple kept each other in their tight embrace and showed no signs of letting go. Feelings that couldn't be communicated with a billion words were thus communicated between them.
ありがとう、ベアトリーチェ。君は僕たちの恩人だ。
And Hideyoshi from wherever he is be like, hey, do you want to revive me too?
ありがとうございます、ベアトリーチェ様。再びジョージ様に会わせてくださったこのご恩を決して忘れません。
よせよせ。愛し合う二人に感謝されては。
Right? I was going to say this must be very humbling for her. I like the sadistic Beato, but I like this side of her too.
存分に再会を祝い合え。
Still seems like a little bit of jealousy there, or a little bit of envy. Beato was leaning her back against the wall, slid down the wall, and sat. How many centuries had it been since she had last grown this tired from using magic? Probably not since the time I first succeeded in magic. Didn't Master praise me for that back then? Oh, but I myself killed that master who praises me, didn't I? Don't be naive, Beatrice. In the end, that's what it means to kill something, right?
ようやく。
See, is she saying that, like, did she kill her like the one that we saw with that fight between them? Or did Beato kill her even before then? That would be crazy.
魔法の使い方を思い出したようですね。頭ん中酸欠でカラッカラで思い出すもヘチマもねえぜ。それよりあんた殺したじゃねえかよ。現れるんじゃねえよ。あなたが未だに私を生かしていますよ。だからこうして現れられます。
Okay.
もっともあなたの頭を撫でに来たわけでもありませんが、無様なわらわをわざわざ嘲笑いに来たかよ。それに隠居までした魔女が今さら頭なんか撫でられちゃ 他の魔女の笑い物だぜ。
It's just like, it's funny, Higurashi too, it's just the callbacks. I don't know if it's intentional or not about being patted on the head.
そうですね。一人前どころか現役を退いたと豪語するあなたなのに、今頃になって魔法の使い方を覚えたなど恥ずかしくて誰にも言えませんね。だなあ、内緒にしてくれよ、お嬢様。
With a sense of pleasant despondency, Beato gazed at the couple hugging each other.
愛か。
When Vergelia says that she just learned to use magic, does she mean, like, because obviously she's been able to use magic for a while, very strong magic, but is that a reference to you're using magic in the proper way, which is to do good things, not bad things?
勝てねえな。
45データ治療
Oh boy, here we go.
射撃準備完了弾手選定装填
Oh wait, are they gonna take out... Oh my gosh. Are they about to take out George and Shannon after just being reunited? That would make sense, because it would be very hard to explain why Shannon has just, like, appeared alive again. So, in order for it to have a human side to it, a human explanation, Shannon would have to be dead, and George now is going to be dead. But then comes the explanation of how did George get out of the mansion or the guest house if not through magical means. Oh, that's so sad. But at least they got their reunion. It's like George said, he just wanted to be reunited with her again.
410射撃
And if they die together, it's better than dying apart from each other, I guess. The golden serpentine arrow fired by the Chesters weaved its way through the bushes in the rose garden, weaved its way through the hedges, and climbed the stone steps towards the mansion's entrance. Because of course the game can't let us have a nice moment for too long, right? Aiming for the keyhole. It weaved through the corridors and flew into the keyhole and the door to the parlor. Yeah, nah, Eva-trice is gonna be probably saying to Beato, like, I knew you'd gone soft, but now you're reviving people? That goes against everything that we're supposed to do. It happened in an instant. It would have been difficult for Beato, who was completely worn out, to have noticed it beforehand. Right before Beato's eyes, the gold snake that flew in through the keyhole spun circles around the two lovers and pierced through their two hearts in the blink of an eye. Oh god. Ava's gonna lose what little sense of her, whatever grip on reality she has left after George dies. And with meticulous precision, that gold snake ran through that hole in Shannon's chest once more. The two had been pierced through the heart by the gold snake. No, by the gold sewing thread used by the new brutal witch's furniture. And it had only taken an instant, so unfitting for the amount of effort it had taken to revive Shannon. In front of Beato's shocked eyes, the two collapsed onto the floor.
George. Canon.
Oh, it's weird to see her actually be upset about humans dying. I wonder if with Beato, maybe she's gonna regain her magical abilities by learning to do good, and her and Badler, and, you know, everybody knowing that the Ushiramiyas do have some sort of magical abilities. Maybe they'll all come up together and fight against Eva-trice. Although, right now, there's not a lot of them alive again. And I doubt that Beato's going to be able to have the power to revive anyone else because she's expended her energy. Maybe Eva-trice will be the new villain for the future, you know, episodes or chapters, and everybody has to stop her. Or maybe the Golden Witch will keep changing. As it resets itself, a new person might find the gold and they become the new witch. George spent his last breath thanking Beato and died side by side with the one he loved. The gold snake, which had still sewed the two in place, spun like a large cyclone, revolving around the inside of the parlor. It was searching for further kills in that room. Then, the tip of the snake met Beato's gaze. In that instant, Beato prepared herself for death. Just then, Virgilia stood in front of her, the fingers of both her hands drawing a mark. In that instant, gold-colored gold leaf buried the inside of the parlor. It was like a blizzard of gold.
ベアト、今のうちに逃げて。シエスタの黄金球からは誰も逃れられない。
410標的疾患200魔法機マシ45了解索敵変更対人画像追尾方式標的再補足410へデータリンク410データ受領すっとろいに先代様来て来て来て着弾
The Chester sisters' golden bow would not let its kill escape. It would not let them block it. No magical barrier could even dream of blocking it without being multi-layered. The weak point during the instance of confusion caused by Virgilia's deception magic was Beato's only chance to escape, and the only opportunity to make the sisters confuse Virgilia for Beato. As Virgilia spread her arms wide, blocking the way to her beloved disciple, this golden snake pierced straight through the location of her heart. Oh boy, the snake, which had snuck in through the keyhole, shot through George and Shannon, and then shot through Virgilia in an instant. Completely failed to notice as Beato escaped. Well, I guess the witches are able to kill each other. I mean, it's like Beato said, she thought she had killed Virgilia, so as soon as Virgilia saw that Beato had gotten away, she expired. Well, is she gone for good, though? The strength left her body, and like gold dust drifting with the wind, her form was erased. Beato completely erased all traces of her magical power, became gold butterflies and passed through the wall, escaping to the wind and rain outside. Beato felt sick from the bottom of her heart. Why? Because she had been attacked by the new witch? Probably not. Of course, she also felt sick over the loss of her master. But even more than that, Beato was enraged at the barbarism which had boorishly stolen the union between the two reunited lovers. Beato had poured out almost all of her magical power to reunite them. And this is when she realizes, like, just how precious human life is, how much power it takes to revive them, and then just be cut down. That miracle had been achieved only as the result of all that. It had taken such a short time to steal it away. Beato trembled at the barbarous cruelty which had ended it so fast. And it was also the true form of the act she herself had committed up until that point. So just as strongly as Beato hated the new witch, she looked at her previous self with disgust. I love this. Like, I never thought that the Beato from the beginning of this game, that I would be cheering her on to be like, she's gonna be a good guy. But now she had to escape. If she was targeted next, she would probably lose her life. And it wouldn't even be funny if the chess player, descended like a god, ended up being attacked and killed by the pieces.
45着弾確認標的資産間違いなく先代様を撃破しましたまた私たちの撃墜気象が増えちまうねにひ愛し合う二人なんだっけ引き裂いて一度合わせて二度もう一度引き裂いて三度楽しめる
Yep, she's talking like Beato used to about how she enjoys. That's why she liked granting people their wishes of love, because then she gets to just tear them apart.
そのついでにあのクソうるさいババアまでさよならできて最高にご機嫌よロノウェイ文句ないわよね
ございません。
No, it's Eva. Like, I wouldn't be surprised with this game if Eva-trice eventually gets a redemption arc as well.
ベアトリーチェ様。
あいつは魔女の碑文の儀式を妨害したのよ。第一の番の生贄を勝手に蘇らせて私の儀式を妨害したわ。文句言われる筋合いなんかなんにもないわよ。しかしずるいなあ。あいつは死体を残さないのね。あのババアも思いっきり何度も無限にいじめ殺して遊んでやろうと思ったのに。
Oh boy, oh boy. I am not looking forward to Ava's breakdown when she realizes that George is gone.
来てないわよ。いつ降りたのよ。
Here we go.
いつって。あれは何時くらいだったっけ？
確か4時か5時くらいだったかな。最低でも1時間以上は前だよ。
俺たち眠くなってその後は多分居眠りしてたし。でも多分ジェシカの言う通りだと思うぜ。1時間か2時間くらい前だった。
私もそのくらいの頃だと記憶しています。
Ava's gonna lose her mind if these guys be like, you're supposed to stay together and you all lost sight of him.
コーヒーのおかわりはいるかと聞かれましたからね。
Something hard to believe had happened. Apparently, when Auntie Eva had left for a second to visit the laboratory, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsui had disappeared. There's no way they went hiding somewhere. Oh, maybe she thought that they kidnapped George or something. And of course, the doors and windows had all been rigorously checked and were all locked from the inside. Not one of them was broken. And that wasn't just the first floor. The second floor was the same. Also, all of the doors and windows were designed in such a way that they couldn't be locked from the outside. In other words, there was no way that Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsui had gone outside, and yet they couldn't be found. Oh, I wonder if maybe she thought that maybe they found the room with all the gold and maybe they're hiding out in there. So maybe she's gonna bring everybody to the gold room, or maybe she's gonna be like, this is the only place we can be safe. Furthermore, they weren't the only ones who disappeared. Astonishingly, George and Iki had too. George and Iki had left saying he was gonna go get more coffee, and had gone downstairs more than an hour earlier. I had been under the impression he was having a good conversation with Auntie Eva and the rest. But Auntie Eva, who had been in the lobby the whole time, said that no one had come down. Since all the doors and windows are locked from the inside, it's hard to imagine that they went outside. Nevertheless, 3 humans had evaporated from this barricaded guest house, which had become a perfect lock room. My gosh! Take a shot every time this game mentions a locked room. It's hard to imagine any reason why they'd hide themselves away for a surprise prank in a situation like this. It's probably appropriate to think they'd become caught up in this crime. When Auntie Eva learned her only son was missing, she went half insane, running from room to room and yelling his name loudly. And Jessica, who had suddenly lost both of her parents, followed suit. Cries of George, George, and Mom, Dad were even now continuing to echo throughout the guest house. I think George said something about wanting to see Shannon's face. It would be reasonable to imagine he'd snuck out of the guest house and gone to the mansion. However, I don't know about Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsui. Maybe they guessed that's what had happened and went to the mansion to search for him. Without even telling Auntie Eva? At this rate, it's only a matter of time before we start talking about leaving the guest house to search for them. At this point, I'd be in favor of that. We said that shutting ourselves up inside the guest house would be safe, and shut ourselves in this morning as a big happy family of 12 people, and yet now there are only 4 people here. In other words, being here does not imply safety. However, there's something even more important that we mustn't forget. That's the fact that all the doors and windows were locked from the inside. This is a locked room. How had they vanished from this place? We'd searched around thoroughly. However, we were unable to find any signs of anyone hiding. The 3 of them had almost certainly been taken outside the guest house.
どうやってでしょう。まさか隠し扉とかがあると。
No, Eva knows all about a hidden room.
隠し扉？
扉も窓も 外から閉めることは構造上不可能です。釣り糸の類を使ってもこの構造では無理でしょうな。となれば扉や窓以外から出たと考えるのが妥当でしょう。
確かにそういう論法にもなるだろうよ。隠し扉が存在しないなんて断言は誰にもできない。しかしそういう発想に飛躍する前に俺はもっとシンプルな可能性も疑ってる。
と申しますと？
For some time, Badler had been opening windows, opening the shutters, and checking outside, and repeating this for each window. It's been a while since we've had a Badler, like breaking down of what he thinks might have happened and what's possible. I miss those. I miss those kind of, like, investigatory aspects.
この窓は静かだな。なるほど。この窓は他と違って建物の構造上風が吹き込まないわけか。
そのようですな。こんなにも外は風雨なのに雨も風も入ってこないとは不思議な気持ちです。
南條先生、今窓を開けた時音を感じたかい？
いえ、気にはなりませんでしたな。よく油が効いていると思います。
つまり誰も見ていない廊下の窓からひょろっと抜け出すことは可能なわけだ。しかもこの窓なら風も吹き込まないから風圧でカーテンや扉が音を立てることもない。静かなもんさ。
Badler leaned down and looked at the ground below. He was searching for some sign that George had jumped down, but at a glance he didn't see any mark like that on the grass in the middle of the pouring rain.
こういう窓が1階にもあるのかもしれない。誰にも気づかれずに表へ出ることは可能だぜ。
しかし扉はおろか窓は全て施錠されて鎧戸まで閉まっていましたぞ。出ることは可能でも閉めることは不可能だ。
閉められるぜ。こうやってカチャンと。
Badler closed the window and locked it, as though this was perfectly obvious.
まさかバトラさんは？
最後に中の人間が鍵を閉めればこんな密室は朝飯前だ。
しかしそれでは
Nanjo turned pale and shook his head several times, because the thing that Badler said was presenting a certain truth to him that was frightening even to imagine.
俺の想像したトリックならな。しかしこんなトリックを使えば怪しまれる人物は極めて限定される。
So is he saying that someone from the inside locked it? So it's somebody that's in this house that's doing it. And what? That they locked the people outside? Is he saying that the killer is in here right now, potentially? He didn't want to say it in front of Nanjo, but after eliminating Jessica, who had been with him the whole time, the only ones who could have done it were Nanjo and Eva.
私はそんなことをしませんぞ。誓ってもいい。
となるとエヴァおばさんと南條先生のアリバイ合戦ってことになる。
And it's unlikely that Eva would do anything to George. Natsui and Kraus, maybe.
俺たちは二人とも怪しんでそれぞれを別々に監禁すればいいだけの話。逆に言えばこのトリックはもっと生存者が多ければ有効かもしれないがこれだけ人数が減った状況下では大して有効ではないんだ。
No, in fact, there's a chance they could dig their own grave with it. It should have been more expedient to make it look like the culprit was outside and to intentionally leave a door unlocked or break a window.
もしこの失踪劇が今日の昼にでも起これば俺は自信満々にこの説を発表しただろうよ。だがこの段階に至っては全然自信が持てないぜ。何なんだこいつは。一体何を意味してやがるんだこの密室はよ。
Isn't that the grand thing that we're asking? What does all of this mean?
やはりその。
なんだい、南條先生。思いつきでもいいから言ってくれよ。
Because Dr. Nanjo looked as though he were trying to swallow his words despite having thought of something, I urged him on. After he refused several times, saying it was just a foolish idea, he finally said it out loud.
上様、やはりこれは本当に魔女の仕業ではないのかと。
バカバカしい。魔女なんているわけがねえぜ。
魔女は私たちに訴えたいのです。人間にはできないことをやってのけるからこそ、自分を魔女だと認めさせたいに違いないのです。私はこのゲストハウス全体の密室からの失踪は、そういう魔女からのメッセージだと感じています。考えてはならないのです。意味なんてきっとないのです。私は恐ろしい。
As Dr. Nanjo shook with fear, it looked like he was trying to erase the fearsome thoughts that he kept imagining, one after the other. When we went downstairs, Auntie Eva and Jessica were enraged, and were each making a lot of noise about leaving this place and searching for their respective families. It was a desire that naturally hit those who could no longer see their family. Auntie Eva told Dr. Nanjo and me to stay here, but I shook my head and started walking. Well, here we go. Now, Eva-trice is going to have all of her sacrifices.
俺も外の空気を吸いたくなってきた。
ああ、行くならさっさと行こうぜ。もうこんなところに閉じこもってるのは真っ平さ。早く父さんや母さんやジョージ兄さんを探しに行こう。
The blood had all risen to Jessica's head. I hope it doesn't set off her asthma. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
残りたい人は勝手に残ってればいいわ。とにかく私たちは表を探してくるわ。
Once again, poor Nanjo just being like, oh, I guess I gotta go or else I'm going to look hella suspicious.
南條先生はどうする？一人で留守番してるかい？
いえ、私もご一緒させてください。
If the alternative was holing up alone in a guest house whose security was by no means guaranteed, it would have been better to be in a danger zone as a group of 4 people. Auntie Eva was holding the gun. Moving separately from her was almost like asking to be mated to the next victim. Oh, poor Eva. Oh god, she's gonna lose her goddamn mind when she finds George. In this way, the 4 of us decided to leave the guest house. We'd barricaded ourselves in, saying we'd be safe if we did, and then lost 8 people. It was almost as though this had been nothing more than a holding cell from which the sacrifices could be killed one after another. We removed the chain, unlocked the front door, and opened it. It was already pitch black out. While there were some lights outside, dimly lit the pathway. They didn't have enough power to illuminate the darkness that some suspicious person was likely to be hiding in.
行くわよ。遅れても知らないんだからね。
Still holding her gun, Auntie Eva dashed out without an umbrella. Jessica followed after her. After looking at each other, Dr. Nanjo and I chased after them. So we still don't know what exactly happened to the bodies of Kraus and Natsu. I'm guessing they were probably... They're going to be placed in some sort of elaborate way for maximum effectiveness and dramatic effect. What in the world is happening in this mansion on this island? Since yesterday, I've been shut up in the cousin's room in the guest house with the rest of my cousins. So I don't know anything about what's been going on outside. And Balor's like, I'm supposed to be the main character and I've just been pushed to the side. Just what has been happening in those places I don't know about. Outside the room, in the mansion, and onto this island. Everything is occurring, everything is proceeding, and everything is ending without my knowing it. Somewhere in my heart, I'd already begun to give up. Most likely, none of us will see tomorrow morning. When the seagulls cry, none shall be left alive. Jessica's woeful voice echoed through the rose garden. Perhaps it was the intuition of a person who lived on this island. After Jessica had looked in the rose garden where Auntie Rosa and Maria had fallen and seen nothing, she had gone to look at the arbor next. Normally, the arbor would probably be a wonderful location to enjoy tea peacefully while appreciating the roses on a good sunny day. Now, that would be a good place to put George and Shannon, considering that they kept meeting up here in previous timelines. But, alright. Who knows, maybe even Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsui had their days where they relaxed and enjoyed tea together there. In that arbor lay the bodies of Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsui. At least they weren't drenched in the rain like Auntie Rosa and Maria had been. But there was no way I could say that out loud to Jessica at that moment. Alright, let's check.
どうなんだ、南條先生。
Check the characters here. Alright. Kraus. Corpse discovered in the Rose Garden Arbor. The cause of death is assumed to be strangulation by a cord-shaped object. A stake-shaped weapon was sticking out of his thigh. If not for the epitaph, stakes wouldn't even be needed. What a pain. Natsui. Cause of death assumed to be strangulation. A stake-shaped weapon sticking out of her calf. Why does the epitaph even need to be followed in the first place? A game? Now, we know... Oh, that's interesting. Oh my gosh, how did I not notice that? It's just like it just shows, obviously, where the blood is. Kinzo got it real bad. And then you can see Hideyoshi, literally, it's just like Eva-trice just wanted to make it as quick as possible. Wow, I can't believe I'm so dumb that I just noticed this. Really noticing this for the first time, and you can see, like, the hands around the neck. Wow, 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 that's... I feel real dumb. That was my first time noticing that, like, the blood splatter shows exactly what happens to them. But, yeah, I mean, we just see the aftermath, but how many times did Ava play with the bodies before she let them, you know, the suffering end?
考察ですな。ほら、ご覧なさい。首にくっきりと何か細いもので締めた跡が残っている。
だな。まさかこっちが主たる死因のわけはねえだろうよ。
The two stake-like weapons decorated with an occult design that were lying on the ground had been found driven into Uncle Kraus's thigh area and near Aunt Natsui's calf. When we had found these sticking out of my parents' forehead and chest, we decided to leave them exactly as they were for the police to preserve the crime scene. But Jessica no longer cared about such matters and immediately pulled the stakes out of her parents' forsaken bodies.
これで頭、胸、腹、膝、足の5つをえぐられた死体が出たわけね。
Maybe Ava's still holding on to some hope. Be like, there's no reason to kill George then because the epitaph, like, the bodies have been, like, they've been taken care of. We don't need any more.
犯人め、殺してやる、殺してやる。第8の番まではこれで終わったわ。続くは第9の番なの。魔女は蘇り、誰も生き残れはしない。上等だぜ。魔女が蘇るってことは犯人が堂々と姿を現してくれるってことなんだろう。何が誰も生き残れないだ。私が殺してやる。父さんと母さんを殺した犯人をこの手で絶対に殺してやる。
There's Jessica assuming it's a he, but I think that's something a lot of people do whenever there's a murder because, you know, most of the time it's a man who tends to be the murderer. Jessica howled furiously, her emotions laid bare. To avoid being crushed by her grief, she could do nothing but resist it with anger.
まだジョージが見つかってないわ。ジェシカちゃんたちはここにいたければいるといい。私は屋敷へ行くわ。
エヴァさん、バラバラに行動してはいけない。みんなで一緒に行動しなくては危険です。
兄さんたちはもうどうしようもないわ。でもジョージはまだどこかで生きているかもしれない。 ここで時間を潰してる暇はないのよ。
Wow. Also, like, a little disrespectful for Eva to say Nissan or his wife, didn't even call her by her name. As Auntie Eva screamed this, Jessica glared at her. Auntie Eva had no more time to bother about the dead. She was more concerned for the safety of her only son, who was yet to be seen.
ジェシカちゃんはここでお父さんとお母さんのそばにいるといい。私はちょっと屋敷に行ってくるわ。バトラ君も南條先生もここにいてくれていい。
After saying this and leaving no time for debate, Auntie Eva rushed out of the arbor. She's gonna find George and then have another argument with her which side. I called out for her to stop, but there was no way she would listen. However, by now, being alone in this situation meant nothing short of death. If we silently watched her leave, it would be the same as letting her die. As long as Auntie Eva was unwilling to stop, we would have no choice but to follow her. And while it may be cruel to say so, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsui were already dead, so there was nothing more we could do for them. In the end, we had no choice but to console Jessica and head for the mansion together. Fortunately, Jessica stood up. I like how it's like, we can't leave people alone, it would be like death, and then it insinuated that, like, so we left Jessica alone. Perhaps she had been able to draw a line under her grief for the moment. But what had surfaced in its place was an expression like a demon.
私がこの手でぶっ殺して必ず敵を取ってやる。行こうぜバトラー。犯人を見つけたら邪魔をするなよ。私が絶対に殺す。
俺も親父たちの仇があるんだ。悪いが早いもん勝ちだぜ。
ああ、そうだな。ぶっ殺してやろうぜ。
In my words, Jessica finally seemed to feel like someone had sympathized with her emotions. She still had that dark expression, and I felt Jessica regaining some of her sanity. We took off, chasing after Auntie Eva. Through the rose garden, up the stone steps, running at full speed towards the mansion, whose large, intimidating shadow flashed in the lightning. With this, the Epitaph murders had finished the 8th twilight, and now, on the 9th twilight, the witch will revive. None shall be left alive. I will most likely lose my life, but at the very least I want to burn the truth into my eyes. That was the only thing motivating me to move at that moment. We were able to reunite with Auntie Eva, who was having trouble with the lock to the front door. It seemed that all the blood had risen to Auntie Eva's head. It was probably making her fingers clumsy. It seemed she couldn't even handle the simple task of inserting the key into the lock. Then there was a faint sound, the sound of the door unlocking, just as though it had waited for all the survivors to unite before opening. It seemed to me as though the malicious mansion was trying to swallow all of the remaining humans at once. The stench that erupted outwards the instant the door opened. Could it really be explained as just a smell? It wasn't just the charred smell from grandfather. I think it may also have contained something like regrets held by so many dead, including our parents and all the servants. What did it mean as it billowed out, overwhelming us? Was it the cry of the dead telling us not to enter? However, Auntie Eva didn't even flinch at something like that. Maybe because she's used to the smell of death, because human her was the one who actually did. I'm still jumping back and forth. I do think that there definitely is a human aspect to it. So those moments where it seems like maybe the witch Eva was the one who did it, maybe it was actually Eva somehow. And we who had to chase after her were forced to step into the mansion despite receiving that message.
ジョージ、ジョージ、聞こえたら返事をしなさい。ジョージ！
Auntie Eva shouted at the top of her lungs. I know, if anything, she didn't kill George. I don't believe, and I doubt she killed Hideyoshi. Considering the situation, it's probably far too optimistic to imagine that he's alive. When we also started following Auntie Eva's example and calling George Eniki's name in loud voices, Auntie Eva found something and stopped walking. She was standing in front of the door to the parlor.
これは
Oh, does it have the red marks on it?
南條先生、ちょっと来てもらえるかしら。
何事ですかな。
I had heard from the adults about the creepy magic circles that had been drawn on doors such as the one to the parlor. Creepy was the only word to describe that thing, which had been scrawled there with deep red paint reminiscent of blood that slowly dripped down. And if it is a human who did that, who is making those circles? However, that had supposedly been there since this morning. Oh, wondering why Auntie Ava, who had seen it already, would think it odd now. Jessica and I stared at the door.
確かにこんな数字が書かれていた記憶はありません。
Okay, there's something added to it.
ええ、なかったわ。不気味な魔法文字みたいなのは書かれていたけど、数字は書かれていなかった。
From what the two of them said, only a magic circle had been there here this morning. However, right now there were 8 digits newly written in the upper part of the magic circle. Okay. 07151129. I'm afraid that if I type that into Google, I'm gonna get a spoiler for this game, so I'm not gonna do that. So is it like so it's a date maybe? 07, well, it can't, because like it's 86, right? It's not going to be like 2011 or 2015 or 2007. 07151129. I didn't know what it meant, but I didn't even want to imagine the thought process of whoever wrote this. And it can't be the alphabet either, because it, you know, unless maybe it's 0, like 0715, but yeah, 29, that wouldn't work. And that's assuming that's the English alphabet, not the Japanese alphabet. It was drawn with what was probably the same paint as the magic circle, but it had clearly been written very recently. The way it had dried and the condition of the color was completely different from the magic circle part.
どうせ魔法的な意味があるんだろうぜ。深く考えたって意味なんかあるわけもないさ。
Jessica intentionally spat those words out in an attempt to wipe out how creepy it was.
魔法陣というものかもしれませんな。ある種の数字遊びに魔除けが宿るという考え方です。
Oh no, numbers. Like number play? It's like the word play with the epitaph. I wouldn't be able to figure that out.
どの列を足しても同じ数字になるみたいなものを皆さんも見聞きしたことがおありでしょう。
Is that Sudoku? I don't know if that's like the premise of Sudoku. I've never tried Sudoku.
あれは四角形の中に埋めた数字の話じゃなかった？これは横一列だもの。何の意味があるのかさっぱりだわ。多分ジェシカちゃんの言うのが正解よ。私たちが深く考えたところで意味なんか何もないわ。
Even though she said that, she probably suspected it might actually mean something. Using an old receipt or something from inside her pocket, Auntie Ava deftly wrote that number down with a short ballpoint pen. Oh, an old receipt! Wasn't that what she used to put in the door of Kenzo's study? Is that the same receipt? Is that repeating itself from the, the fragments or the worlds, or is that just coincidence? Because an 8-digit number would probably be a little difficult to memorize unless it had some kind of pattern.
これ日にちとかな。
日にち？何の話？
いや偶然だろうけどな。俺の誕生日7月15日なんだ。
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't think about... Oh, yeah, it could be... derp? I was thinking about, like, day, month, year. But even then, that doesn't quite work.
0715が7月15日を示すのかなって思ったら。
Okay, so then we've got November 29th.
1129もほらその11月29日って読んだらちょうど語呂がいいかなって思ってよ。
なんでバトラーの誕生日がこんなとこに書いてあるんだよ。そして11月29日ってなんだよ。
俺が知りてえぜ。まあそのたまたまの偶然だろうけどな。そう考えたらなんだか不気味になっちまったぜ。11月29日が誰かの誕生日だったりとかするのか？
Is it Maria's, maybe?
うちの家族は違うぜ。親父もキリエさんもエンジェも違う。
And there's that Angie, or...
もちろん俺のお袋もだ。
Oh, someone mentioned about the tips. If there's any tips that I... Okay, characters sometimes discuss their interpretations of the epitaph. If you would like to explore the epitaph, you may find it interesting to browse our discussions in the message browser. Additional translation notes may appear. Marut. This word is probably related to the fictional unit of length from Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which seems to be about 1 meter long. Okay. Alright, nothing I can see from there that's really any different.
心当たりがありませんな。金蔵さんの誕生日でも、源氏さんの誕生日でもないはずだ。
うちの家族も違うわよ。ローザやマリアちゃんでもないわ。
Alright, well that answers that question.
うちの家族だって違うぜ。カノン君も違うし、シャノンも違う。私、使用人の人の誕生日にはちゃんとプレゼント渡してるからみんな知ってるけど、11月29日に誕生日の人間なんて知らないぜ。
Once we started imagining that the 8 digits, which we had thought were meaningless, were actually 2 dates written together, and really started to look that way. However, its true meaning may be something completely different, or there may be no meaning at all. Anyway, since we don't have any real clue, it's probably pointless to stand around here and analyzing it. More important was the inside of the parlor. This morning, behind each of those doors was a magic circle drawn on them. There had been a body of a victim. And now that a number had been newly added to the door, what new thing had been added inside the parlor? When Auntie Eva tried to open it, she felt the resistance of the lock. She immediately took out a master key and put it in the keyhole. Oh, poor Eva. This is where she's gonna lose the last semblance of her sanity. As soon as she opened the door, Auntie Eva let out a high-pitched scream and ran inside. That alone was enough to tell us what had happened inside the room. Dr. Nanjo and I looked at each other, and I shook my head slightly as we entered the parlor.
Georgie! Georgie! しっかりして! Georgie! Nanjo sensei, 早く!
George Aniki had fallen alongside Shen and Shen's body. His chest was stained bright red, and from his still opened eyes, all my condolences to Auntie Eva, but I couldn't pick up any signs of life. Alright, and Georgie. Corpse discovered in the mansion's parlor. The murder weapon is assumed to be a gun or spear-shaped object. In exchange for his soul, the witch granted an 8-digit number, 07151129. When spoken, a small golden land will be opened. What? Okay. After moving to take his pulse, Dr. Nanjo shook his head, wordlessly reporting that George Aniki was dead. Brushing him aside, Auntie Eva once again crouched beside George Aniki and started crying at the top of her lungs. With this, Aniki's death, one thing had become certain. The murders would not be ending at the 8th twilight. The epitaph was going to be carried out in its complete form, including the 9th twilight, and none will be left alive. I'm really starting to lose the plot. Oh, that's putting it lightly. For some reason, Auntie Ava's half-insane cries and appearance actually made me cool down. Crestfallen and exhausted, I flopped onto the sofa and plunked my feet on top of the table. Maybe all these murders had paralyzed my heart. Or maybe he knows subconsciously that he's done this over and over and over again, so it just becomes more and more routine. Instead of fright, the stronger emotion I'm feeling is one of complete confusion. Dad and Kyrie-san have died, and starting with the servants, people have been killed off one by one. And at one hell of a pace, too. I don't know what time the first murder started, but I'd say we're probably being killed at a rate of about 1 person an hour. We believe the boat will come for us around 9 tomorrow. There's still a full 12 hours until then. How many more sacrifices to the witch would there have to be for us to survive? With the 4 of us, if one goes each hour, we won't last any longer than 4 hours. It's not clear anymore if we'll even last until midnight tonight. Yesterday after lunch, we came to this parlor. At about the time the discussion had turned to the black tea that Auntie Rosa said she bought, we kids had started talking about going to take a walk. Maria was fooling around. Didn't Shannon-chan bring us some cookies? She said Kumasawa-san had baked them or something. I'd probably have laughed my ass off if there had actually been a cooked mackerel, one mixed in with them. That's right. I'll never hear Kumasawa Bachan's mackerel jokes again, will I? And there's that whole thing about Kumasawa actually being Virgilio, which is still like, what? Oh yeah, if I only remember stuff about Kumasawa Bachan, that wouldn't be fair to everyone else. Why did Dad and Kirie-san even go outside? It's not like we die from being without food for a day. So why did Gluttony get a hold of them and make them go to get food? I'll bet it was my fearless dad who started complaining about being hungry. Kirie-san, you were supposed to be the brakes for my reckless dad. Why didn't you stop him? And what about your daughter, Angie? She's only 6 years old. You weren't thinking of entrusting her to me, were you? At this point, it's doubtful that even I will be able to leave this island alive.
やめなさい。こんな時に争ってどうするんですか。
What?
ジェシカさん、やめなさい。
Whoa. Some kind of commotion was interrupting my thoughts. Whoa, I looked up to see what it was and saw Jessica and Auntie Ava had started fighting each other at some point. No, maybe I should say Jessica was grabbing at Auntie Ava.
エヴァおばさんが父さんたちを殺したんだ。他に説明がつかない。
Yeah, Jessica, I mean, I know it showed that the witch... Well, I mean, the witch Ava didn't technically put her hands on them as she sent her furniture to kill them, but if we go from a human point of view, she may have done it. But maybe Hideyoshi did. Maybe, if we're looking at a human point of view, maybe Hideyoshi killed Kyrie, and maybe he was in on it with Ava. Maybe Ava told Hideyoshi about her finding the gold, and they decided together to kill off other people. But I can't see Hideyoshi going along with that. But I'm just like, yeah, maybe Ava did it, but maybe Hideyoshi was in on it. Maybe he killed Kyrie and Rudolph while they were in the mansion, but then someone got to him? I don't know.
何をバカなことを。あんたのお父さんたちなんか知るわけないでしょ。ゲストハウスの1階にいたのは誰だよ。エヴァおばさんだ。1階のロビーには父さんと母さんと、そしてエヴァおばさんがいた。
Derp. I'm thinking about Battler's parents, not Jessica. That's right. That's still, yeah, it's very suspicious. And I said that too, about how, like, Natsui and Kraus just happened to die and their bodies happened to be taken away when Ava was the only one who was downstairs with them. And she just happened to go to the bathroom to splash her face.
生き残ったのは誰だ。エヴァおばさんだけだ。どうして。あんたが犯人だからに決まってるじゃないか。父さんと母さんを殺して外へ運び出して白々しく鍵を閉めて魔女の仕業なんかを装いやがったんだ。じゃあジョージはどうしていなくなったのよ。1階には降りてきてないのよ。じゃあ2階でいなくなったっていうの。2階には誰がいたのよ。あなたたちがいたんじゃない。あなたは知ってたんでしょ。ジョージがこっそりゲストハウスを抜け出すのを。それを自分は何も知らないような顔を抜けとあんたがジョージを止めててくれればジョージは
やめなさいというのに。ジェシカさんはずっといとこ部屋にいました。そしてエヴァさんもずっと1階のロビーにいました。
They both turn on. What about you, Nanjo?
そして2人とも何も悪くない。
You're not family, so we can suspect you and not feel as bad.
ただ家族を失って悲しいだけなんです。犯人なんか誰もいない。どこにもいない。ただ魔女のせいなだけなんです。
And Ava doesn't want to hear that because if she believes that the witch is her, then it is her fault. To a degree.
だからお二人で憎み合うのはやめなさい。
The witch's fault, is it? I wonder if that's a good way to mediate things for now. Yes, I finally understand the meaning of all the doors and windows having been locked from the inside and 3 whole people evaporated from the guest house. This is what they were after, making us think the culprit was inside and causing this ugly mutual hatred. Had to be the culprits, the witch's goal. But in that case, how had the culprit locked it from the outside? It's certainly true the master key had been stolen when Dad's group was attacked. But the doors and windows to the guest house had been constructed so you couldn't lock them from the outside no matter how hard you tried. So that master key shouldn't mean anything for the guest house locked room. Jessica and Auntie Ava were turning their sadness at losing their blood relatives into anger at the person in front of them. Dr. Nanjo was trying to step between them. and I sat haphazardly in a sofa staring up at the ceiling, thinking about things that didn't even matter anymore with a worn-out expression. I just couldn't believe that this was the same parlor that had been so warm and pleasant midday yesterday, for just a short time before the typhoon hit. Oh, what? What the fuck? What? What? The sudden sound of a gunshot shook me out of my half-asleep trance. Whoa. Smoke was rising out of the barrel of the gun Auntie Eva held. Jessica was rolling around on the floor, covering both her eyes. Auntie Eva and Dr. Nanjo were looking down at her, shocked.
大丈夫ですかジェシカさん
Whoa.
ジェシカさん
What?
私のせいじゃないわよ。あんたがよせっていうのに突っかかってくるから。
Well, I was right about her, like whatever semblance of sanity she had is gone.
おいおい、どうしたってんだ。何事なんだ。
Jessica grabbed at Auntie Eva, and it turned into a scuffle. Then they had started fighting over the gun Auntie Eva had been holding. And some movement or another caused the trigger to be pulled. I didn't know the details, but whether the bullet had grazed her, or whether she had been burned by the discharge. But whatever the case, Jessica was covering both her eyes, screaming in pain and rolling around on the floor. Oh god, I hope her eyes didn't get taken out.
大丈夫落ち着いて大した怪我ではありませんぞ気をしっかり
Dr. Nanjo lent Jessica his shoulder, saying he would tend to her in the servant room. The servant room in this mansion apparently had a bed and first aid kit, and was able to function as an infirmary. And those two are about to die.
父さんと母さんの仇殺してやる。殺してやる。私じゃないわよ。私じゃない。
ジェシカさん傷に触りますからそれ以上騒がないでさあ使用人室に行きましょう
Jessica still continued to curse Auntie Eva as her parents' murderer. It seemed Auntie Eva couldn't conceal her shock at the fact she had pulled the trigger, even if it had been an accident.
私のせいじゃないわよ。あの子が掴みかかってきたからこんなことに。私は殺してなんかないわよ。それよりジョージは誰が殺したの？そうよ、ジョージは誰が殺したのよ。ジョージ。ジョージ。私は悪くない。私は悪くない。
待てよエヴァおばさん。一人になるな。
Oh no, everybody's separating from each other. I don't know whether it was because Auntie Eva couldn't stand her mistake, or whether it was because she had lost herself to anger at the person who had killed her only son, or whether it was both of those mixed together. In any case, she ran out to the corridor, yelling, fearful, and shouting. I was also worried about Jessica's condition, but anyway, right then, I couldn't leave Auntie Eva alone. Why would she go off on her own in this mansion of all places? Is she suicidal? Probably a little bit. Maybe she's going after, she's trying to find her witch self that she thinks was behind everything. But I think she believes, like, even if there's a witch side of her, wouldn't kill George. Dr. Nanjo took Jessica towards the servant room. Are the bodies still there? Is Shannon's body still there? I would assume so. There was no mention of it, but that's probably because, like, they already know she's dead. I chased after Auntie Eva, dashing into the depths of the mansion. Maybe Shannon was faking her death, and then maybe somehow George was convinced to go and see Shannon's body, and maybe Shannon was still alive and killed him? I don't know. It's just a lot of questions right now. After sitting Jessica on the servant room bed, Nanjo told her several times not to rub her eyes and examine the affected area. The barrel had probably been near her eyes. There was a possibility the flames from the discharge had damaged her corneas. There's no threat to her life, but would probably be necessary to have a suitable doctor look at her as soon as humanly possible. So she's basically blind now, and yet she still thinks she's going to be able to take on the killer. Nanjo applied emergency first aid, covering the affected area with gauze and wrapping it with a bandage. As a result, Jessica completely lost her field of vision.
いいですかな。傷が痛んだりうずいたりするでしょうが、絶対にかいたり揉んだりしてはなりません。
Man, I'm surprised with all going on that Jessica has not had an asthma attack once.
明日になったらすぐに眼科の先生のところへ行きましょう。
あいつめ、本当は私を殺すつもりだったんだ。ほんのちょっと角度が悪かったら今頃殺されてた。絶対にあいつを警察へ突き出してやる。
エヴァさんはそんなことはしませんぞ。あれは事故です。
事故なもんか。あいつが父さんと母さんを殺したんだ。この島には19人目も魔女もいるわけがない。あいつが全ての犯人なんだ。ゲストハウスの1階にはあいつだけがいた。父さんと母さんを殺し、それを見てしまったジョージ兄さんも口封じに殺したに違いない。じいさまや使用人の人たちだってそうさ。
I could see Ava killing pretty much everyone, maybe even Hideyoshi, if she thought he was going to betray her. Not George. She would not kill him, no matter what.
きっとあいつは夕べの親族会議の途中でこっそり抜け出し、みんなを殺したに違いない。
もしそうならば、警察が調べればすぐにわかることです。警察はすごいですぞ。鑑識の手にかかればわからぬことなどありません。私たちは誰かを疑ったり恨んだりする必要などないのです。すべて警察が解決してくれます。だからジェシカさんは今は体を休め、目を楽にすることに専念するのです。あまり眉間にシワを寄せては目にはもちろん美容にもよくありませんぞ。
Wow, Nanjo, way to comfort a girl and be like, don't wrinkle your forehead, you'll be ugly. Indeed, when Jessica had grown agitated in her verbal abuse of Ava, she had naturally started glaring, and the pressure on her eyes hurt her. Or maybe Nanjo's just appealing more to her vanity, being like, okay, you might not care about your eyes, but don't make yourself look old. Jessica herself soon realized the more she talked, the more of the wound would hurt, and regardless of whether she had overcome her suspicions of Ava, she regained her composure for the time being.
あいつが殺したんだ。父さんや母さんを、シャノンやカノン君を。カノン君。
She had heard that Canon had been killed in the chapel. Jessica still hadn't seen his face after he had died. Jessica was now less fearful about the fact she might go blind, and more frightened the police would carry Canon's corpse away while she still couldn't see, and she'd have to say her final farewell without being able to see his face. Her anger at the culprit, and her sadness at the death of the person she had liked. And your parents? You care more about Canon than your parents. Those mixed emotions provoked her tear ducts. But right now, tears were actually painful for her, so she wasn't even permitted to leisurely remember the late Canon's face. Jessica could do nothing but sit on the bed and let her head droop, withstanding the pain.
さて、今度はエヴァさんの方が心配です。気に病まれていなければいいのですが。
Letting out a small sigh of relief that Jessica had calmed down for the time being, he stuck his head out to the hallway to look for any sign of the others coming back. Wait, are you gonna leave Jessica alone? Oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh. They met eyes. Nanjo, unable to understand who this person was bewildered for an instant.
視力を失った人間って反魔法力も対魔法抵抗力もゼロになるんですって。つまり今のあんたはアイソレーテッドポーン。意味がわかるかしら。
なんですと?
There was no possible way that Nanjo could have understood who the person in front of him was. And there was certainly no possible way he could ever have understood what she had just said.
南條先生、 どうしたんです？
Unable to see, Jessica couldn't tell what was going on except by whatever voice she heard. But since she had heard Nanjo say something with an uneasy tone, she tightened up, thinking something bad might have happened.
やめてくれ。殺さないでくれ。わしには病弱の孫がおる。ここでは死ねんのだ。
Does Nanjo actually have a sick grandchild, or is he just saying that to appeal to whatever humanity she does not have?
頼む、見逃してくれ。
南條先生、南條先生。
Jessica couldn't do anything except call out from the bed. That's terrifying. Poor Jessica. She can't see anything, but she knows like she's probably about to die. Judging by the tone of his voice, Nanjo was in the corridor being confronted by someone, and he was scared. There's no doubt at this very moment his life was being threatened.
よせ、やめろ。
第9の晩に魔女は蘇り、誰も生き残れはしない。
The witch pointed the end of her gold staff at Nanjo. Even though he didn't know what she was planning to do, Nanjo imagined she must be trying to take his life.
南條先生、南條先生、そこに誰がいるんだよ。返事をしろよ。
やめてくれ。
Bang! A sharp sound echoed. That sounded like a gunshot. Like that might not be a witch, but it could be someone with a gun like Eva. Or, we know that there's multiple guns around, or it could be someone that is not accounted for that could have a gun. And tapered to the point just as sharp, the elongated tip of the golden staff was struck straight into Nanjo's forehead. No, maybe not. Jessica, who only had ears to help her try to grasp what was happening, had no clue what was going on. But even so, she was able to realize with that sound, Nanjo had died. Oh, interesting that Beatrice is on the human side. Has she always been there? Or am I just noticing this now, or is that a hint about something? Anyway, Nanjo, corpse discovered in the hallway outside the servant room in the mansion. And they keep saying that the murder weapon is assumed to be a gun or a spear-shaped object. So they're kind of like making it seem like it could be either, and that's for almost every body. So someone with a gun could be going around blasting people. And so it's not a witch after all. One last push, and he too would probably have been home free, but at the last possible moment, she did not permit him that. And the person who had killed him was now in the corridor, right in front of the servant room. Furthermore, since she couldn't see, she wouldn't even be able to run away, much less resist. Upon discovering she was in a life-or-death situation, caught like a rat in a trap, Jessica felt her blood run cold.
ああ、ジェシカ。かわいそうにね。目を怪我しちゃったのね。なら、あなたは逃げることもできないわね。今から南條の死体でたっぷり遊ぶわ。それに飽きたら、次はあなたを殺してたっぷり遊んであげる。いいえ、せっかく目が見えないんだもの。殺してからだけじゃない。殺す前にも。
Oh boy.
たっぷり
Oh,
遊
that's
んであげる
fucked.
わね。そこでしばらく震えながら待ってなさいね。南條の死体で私がどんな風に遊ぶのかをたっぷり想像しながら。
Struck with fear, Jessica let out a frail scream. She really wanted to scream in a much louder voice, trying to get someone to help her, but she couldn't. When a person is faced with true fear, it clogs up their throat. Right now, Jessica could barely even breathe. She searched around with her hands, trying to find some way to escape. But even though she knew this room well, just being unable to see made it like a locked room of darkness. Yeah, a locked room no matter what, even if it's not literally a locked room. She bumped into some shelves or something, and some tins of sweets and bottles and things fell down from them, hitting her on the head. As she was now, even protecting her head to block them wasn't working out. She was becoming painfully aware of how very powerless humans become, just by losing their sense of sight. Of course, she had no time to appreciate that. She crawled around as best she could, trying to escape that place. But she kept bumping into things she didn't understand, getting hit by various falling objects. And it felt to her like the entire room was alive, bullying her and refusing to let her escape. Then she heard footsteps from the presence in the hallway, and then a voice. The person had probably peered into the room since Jessica was making so much noise.
にぎやかね。レディーならおとなしくベッドに座って待っていなさい。令状にふさわしい素敵な真っ赤な死に装束を与えてやるんだから。あなたを見つけた人が失神してしまいそうになるくらいのね。
Just a short while ago, she had sworn she would kill the culprit if she found them. However, she was now all too powerless. She couldn't do anything except let out feeble screams and crawl around on the floor, bumping her head into the bed and the legs of desks. Aww. Oh, it's so sad she's calling for him, even though she, as far as we know, he's dead. In the corridors, the witch thought of how to toy with Nanjo's life. A single gold butterfly secretly watched that scene from the corner of the hallway. It was Beato, who had barely escaped with her life once before. The gold butterfly softly returned to human form. Its form was faint and transparent like a lace curtain. Even just the power to hold a human form had been scarce for her. Right next to her, Ronove had also appeared. Look at her, does Beato actually want to help the humans?
もとより誰も生き残れはしませんが。
あやつはカノンに恋心を寄せておった。わらわはそれをもてあそんだこともある。しかしそれは魔女として恥ずべきことであった。
愛とは一なる元素。恋心はそれ以上に純粋で尊いものでございます。なぜかお嬢様はとてもそれを嫌われますが。
お師匠様は言った。魔法とは人を幸せにするためにあると。わらわもかつてはそれを知っていたはずだった。そしてそれを忘れた時からわらわは魔女ではなくなっていたのだ。だからわらわはバトラの対戦相手の資格を失っていたのだ。
まさかお嬢様ジェシカを助けるおつもりですか。危険です。
Yeah, she's gonna rescue anyone to be Badler, because I'm pretty sure she's kind of in love with him.
分かっておる。どうせ助けても黄金鏡の扉が開けば魔女の宴の慰み者よ。しかしそれでもあやつの殺し方に比べれば数段慈悲深い。魔女の宴は恐るべき方法にて命を奪う。二度は奪わぬ。生死をもてあそばぬ。しかしあやつは違う。何度でも殺す。面白半分で殺す。そこにはわずかほどの慈悲もない。わらわはせめてジェシカをそのような残酷な運命から
確かにそれを行うことは良き魔女として称えられることでしょう。しかし新しきベアトリーチェ様はすでにお嬢様のことを敵視なされています。もう一度姿を見られることがあったなら今度は逃れる術はありませんよ。
ジョージをシャノンに合わせた時わらわはようやく魔女そし して魔法とはどういうものなのかを。わらわは魔女だ。魔女であらねばならぬ。そしてバトラに対戦相手だと認められ、今度こそバトラに魔女だと認めさせなければならぬのだ。そのための道は長く険しいかもしれない。しかし今ここでその一歩を踏み出さねば、わらわは魔女を名乗れぬのだ。
お気持ちはわかりますが、どうやってお救いになるつもりです？今のお嬢様の身に使える魔法は多くありません。シャノンを蘇らせる時ですらジョージの力を借りたではありませんか。
だからこそジェシカだけは救えるかもしれぬのだ。
Is she somehow gonna get Canon to... But he's dead, I assume.
今あやつは
Oh.
カノンに助けを求めて
Oh. She gonna Oh my god, she gonna bring Canon back?
その思いの力を借りれば、
Oh my goodness.
わらわの魔力にてもう一度冥府の扉を叩けるかもしれない。
Oh, but Jessica won't see him, but I mean, she'll at least maybe know he's there and saved her. Oh, that's so sweet.
叩けはするでしょう。しかし魔力を使い切ります。新しきベアトリーチェ様にもし見つかったら本当に逃れる術はありませんよ。私はすでにお嬢様の執事ではありません。いざという時お助けすることはできませんのでご了承。
承知しておるわ。わらわはこれまで数えることもできぬほどの命をもてあそび、ならばその罪、同じ数だけの命を救うことでしかあがないものかもしれん。もとよりわらわに失うものなどないわ。名も魔力も引き継ぎ、今や魔女とも認められぬただの黄金の長女。
バトラ様はどうな
Yeah,
さるの
right?
ですか？
Yeah, she's like, he's on his own.
ゲームの途中です。彼はお嬢様がお戻りになるまで待つとおっしゃいました。ここで果てるようなことがあっても良いのですか？
Maybe, maybe she has an idea of how she could come back even if Eva-trice kills her.
お嬢様にはバトラ様の向かいの席に戻る義務があるのですよ。
だからこそだ。わらわにしか救えぬ命があるならば、わらわはそれを救う。そして魔女と認められるぞ。わらわは魔女にならねばならぬのだ。これが試練であるならば、これまでの悪行に見合わぬ幼稚なものよ。さあ、姿を消せ、殿。かつて黄金の魔女と呼ばれた一匹の蝶の最後となるかもしれぬ魔法を見るがいい。
かしこまりました。黄金の魔女の名に恥じぬ魔法、拝見させてもらいます。願わくばそれが最後の魔法とならぬこと。
行け。もしインクが足りるなら、我が愚かなる生涯を記して同じ道を歩もうとする愚か者に手渡す。さらばだ、殿。
Look at this. Wow. I'm so proud of her. She's come so far.
お嬢様、僕はいつだって
Aww.
お嬢様のすぐそばに控えております。
カノン君、
Jessica thought she had just heard Canon's voice. She looked around with unseeing eyes, but of course, there was no way for her to see anything. On the contrary, that action caused her head to hit the desk again.
助けて。助けて。
はい、お嬢様、僕がお助けします。
カノン君、生きてたの。
This time, she thought she had heard his voice clearly. Jessica jumped up in surprise, banging her head against the desk once more. It's like when my dog wears a goddamn cone, just walking around hitting her head on things.
お嬢様、どうか心を落ち着けてお聞きください。
I have a feeling Jessica's gonna die no matter what. Just like with George and Shannon, this is very sweet. It's just gonna get cut short.
残念ながら僕は生きてはいません。僕はすでに死んでしまっています。ですが、あの魔女がお嬢様の危機を僕に知らせに来ました。そしてわずかの間だけお嬢様に手助けできる時間をくれました。どうか心をもっと落ち着けて、そうすればお嬢様にも僕の姿が見えるようになります。
Jessica obeyed those words. She chased all idle thoughts from her head and relaxed her breathing. Her heart actually felt like it was going to explode after hearing the voice of the loved one she thought was dead. She resisted that with all of her strength. When she did, she could feel Canon-kun really was right in front of her. Even though she was unable to see, somehow she was still able to sense him clearly.
僕が見えますか、お嬢様。
はあ、見えるぜ。確かにカノン君が見えるよ。
僕は魂だけの存在です。だからお嬢様に触れることはできません。こうして言葉をかけることしかできない、それだけしかできないか弱い存在ですが、それでもお嬢様の力になれるはずです。
言葉だけなの？カノン君に触ることはできないの？
僕は今ろうそくの煙よりも儚い存在で
He's
す。
like, okay, time is of the essence, so we don't have time to talk like this. Just, we gotta do stuff now.
聖者であるお嬢様に触れられればたちまち書き消えてしまうほどに。だからどうか触れようとしないでください。僕もお嬢様に触れたい気持ちを抑えているのですから。それよりお嬢様、よく聞いてください。新しい黄金の魔女は残酷な心の持ち主です。必ずやお嬢様をひどい目に遭わせようとするでしょう。この部屋から逃げ出し隠れなければなりません。
どうやって？
Escape and hide, I feel like it's just delaying the inevitable.
私は目が見えない。
静かに僕がお嬢様の目になります。僕がかける言葉に従って動いてください。まずそのまま3歩這い出て、それから立ち上がってください。今お嬢様がいるのは机の下です。そのまま立てば頭をぶつけます。
机の下だったのか。わかったよ。1、2、3、立つぜ。
お上手です。次は時計で言う9時の方向を向いてください。はい、お上手です。
なんだか恥ずかしいぜ。
大 大丈夫ですか？傷が痛みますか？
いや、平気だぜ。次は。
Jessica thought that if this was a dream, she didn't want to wake up. And if she were allowed to, she would have wanted to take off the bandage covering her eyes and see him. However, if she did that, surely Canon would vanish like frail candle smoke, just like he himself had said. She was afraid of that. So she satisfied herself just being able to hear his voice once more, repressing her desire to see him, to hold him. So what hurt her eyes now were tears of gratitude. Tears of gratitude from the god, or else witch who had given her this miraculous moment. And this is how Beato gets people to believe in her, not just Balor, but everybody. It's like by being, instead of a cruel witch, to be a benevolent witch.
大丈夫なの？こんなに喋って。あいつに気づかれない？声を聞かれない？
隠密の結界を張っています。大きな音や声を出さなければ誰も気づきません。だから誰も僕の気配には気づけない。
なんだかわからないけど、とにかく静かにしてれば大丈夫ってことなんだな。次はどうするんだ？
そのままゆっくり10歩ほど歩いてください。ソファーに触ります。それに沿って進んでください。ゆっくりと落ち着いて僕の言葉を信じて。
不思議だぜ。目が見えないってのはあんなにも怖いものだったのに、カノン君と一緒だと全然怖くないよ。
そう、それがソファーです。左になぞりながらゆっくり進んで、すぐ左にテーブルがあります。すねをぶつけないように気をつけて。
It was a very, very peculiar and magical team effort. Even though she would be killed in an instant if she were noticed by the terrible witch, there was no fear in Jessica's heart right then. She was being protected and guided by Canon, who she had thought she would never be able to meet with again. It was probably only a momentary miracle, and even so, Jessica was deeply grateful for it. If she had hoped for too much, she was sure he would disappear. So in order not to break this transient miracle, in order to engrave this moment into her heart for all eternity, she slowly, slowly continued to walk, obeying Canon's voice.
さあ、さらに10歩を歩けば、使用人室から出ます。そしたら、9時の方向を向いて、ゆっくりとずっと歩いてください。右の壁に手を置き、それに沿って、ずっと、僕が、安全な部屋までお連れします。
そこに行ったらカノン君は帰っちゃうの？
Canon didn't answer, but even his lack of an answer was enough to let her know that that was the truth.
なら、やだ。
Jessica, come on.
行きたくないよ。
ここにいれば、魔女に殺されます。
いいよ。殺されればカノン君のいる世界へ行けるもん。
お嬢様、どうか聞き分けてください。
He's like, I came back from whatever afterlife I'm in to help you out. You won't even do it.
死者である僕には、人の世はまぶしくて辛すぎる。だから長くはとどまれません。だからお嬢様、僕に許された時間で、お嬢様を安全な場所まで導くことを
Plus, as we know with the
どうか許
epitaph
してください。
and with the witch, she's gonna die anyway. It doesn't matter. This is just delaying the inevitable.
そしたら、時間が尽きるまで、ずっとお嬢様と一緒にいますから。
それがカノン君にできる精一杯なの？
はい、その代わり、1秒でも長く、お嬢様のそばにいるようにします。ずっとお嬢様といてお話をします。
See, I can also see this as not being magic, but maybe just in the throes of panic. This is her coping method, is like she thinks that she can hear Canon, but she's just imagining it. Now, the fact that she's getting exact instructions about how to get out of this place, that I can't explain, but I could explain her just like, feeling she's about to die, and she just imagines Canon is there to kind of comfort her.
どんなお話？
どんなお話がいいですか？
カノン君が聞かせてくれるならどんな話でもいいよ。
では、勇気のない臆病な使用人の少年の話を。太陽のように眩しいお嬢様に恋心を抱き、同
Aww.
じ気持ちを打ち明けられながらも。
This could also be her imagining Canon, admitting his love for her because that's what she wants to hear.
臆病さに負け、ついに生あるうちに自分に素直になれなかった。
But if I just
愚かで哀れな少年の話を。
believe for a moment, this is very sweet, just like him coming back from the dead to confess his feelings because he couldn't do it when he was alive.
なら私もしたいよ。大好きな男の子にね。もっともっと大好きだよ。
I'm just imagining while they're talking that Eva-trice just comes up from behind and just kills her. Because, man, oh man, like they were wasting time here.
勇気を振り絞れなかった臆病な女の子の話を。そしてその男の子に再会できる奇跡を神様がくださって、その勇気を振り絞る機会をもう一度与えてもらった女の子が。
僕もその話を聞きたいです。だからそのためにも行きましょう。安全な場所まで。
カノン君と一緒ならいつまでだってどこまでだって歩くよ。もう目なんていらない。
Man, Eva-trice must be having a blast with Nanjo's body. This has taken a while.
カノン君が踏み出せと言うなら崖の先へだって一歩を踏み出すよ。
ありがとう。さあ、お嬢様、参りますよ。最初の10歩。
嫌だ。ジェシカって呼んでくれなきゃ。やだ。
わかりました。では、ジェシカ、最初の10歩を踏み出して。
カノン君。
Quietly, quietly, Jessica and Canon snuck slowly out of the servant room. Directly around the corner, the witch could be seen cruelly looking down upon Nanjo's corpse, but the witch did not even notice their presence. However, Ronave, who was waiting at her side, met Canon's eyes. Canon thought, oh no, grimacing and blocking Jessica with his back. However, Ronave did not inform his master. As though it had been his imagination that he ever spotted him in the first place, he pretended to know nothing. No, maybe he did appear to chuckle. From a finger on one of Ronave's hands, which were joined behind his back, a single small gold butterfly appeared, flying in front of Canon as though guiding him. It was undetectable by the master he served. Canon was surprised at the magic that butterfly held, because it was far more powerful than the stealth barrier Canon had. He may not have known, but that power had originally been Ronave's. An imitation of that had been given to Canon by Kinzo, and that was what Canon was using now. As the butterfly of stealth magic scattered gold scales, it grew smaller bit by bit. It probably wouldn't last long. But without a doubt, even that would buy them enough time to get far away from that cruel witch.
さあ、お嬢様、その壁に沿い、ずっと歩いていきましょう。ずっと。ずっと。
カノン君と一緒ならどこまでもずっとずっと。
Led and protected by the small gold butterfly, The two, who were separated by the wall between life and death, slowly walked away towards the end of the corridor. There was no way the evil witch would have any magic to notice their flight. Until they had already disappeared down the other hall of the corridor, the witch never noticed that Jessica had vanished. She's gonna catch up to her eventually. I don't know how safe this safe room is going to be. By the time the gold butterfly that Ronove had cast out evaporated completely, Jessica had reached the parlor. Even though she would have been able to make it this far in no time if she had been able to see, as she was now, it had been a long, long adventure.
さあ、お嬢様。
See, this is like George got brought to the parlor by Shannon, and now Jessica's being brought to the parlor by Canon. Is there a reason for this? This wasn't a very safe room for George, so I don't know how safe this place is.
客間にたどり着きました。これからお嬢様を窓際のカーテンの束のところまでお連れします。その中に隠れれば
Really?
きっと安全です。
Really? You think this witch is gonna be not be able to find her because she's hiding behind some curtains?
カーテンの中か。うまいな。私も昔よくそこに隠れたもんだぜ。
ベアトリーチェ様。
Canon called the witch's name. Jessica looked around in surprise, but being unable to see, she obviously couldn't find the witch. Beato had appeared once again with a faint form. Canon squared off against the evil witch, but Beato's expression was soft and actually pitying.
どういう気まぐれで僕を蘇らせてくれたのか。僕にはあなたの気持ちがわからない。
気まぐれに過ぎぬ。いや、魔女とはこうあるべきなのだ。わらわがそれを気づくのに1000年をかけた。それだけの愚かしい話だ。
誰がいるの？
お嬢様、お静かに。彼女は魔女。ベアトリーチェ。僕をお嬢様にもう一度会わせてくれた恩人です。
魔女ベアトリーチェ。
わらわのことなどどうでもよい。それより早くその女をカーテンの陰に隠すがよい。そなたに残された時間も長くないであろう。ジェシカと最後の語らいに費やすがいい。カーテンの束の中で密会とは、そなたらもなかなか味な真似をする。
ありがとうベアトリーチェ。カノン君に会わせてくれてありがとう。
Jessica didn't know where Beato was, so she said that while facing the wrong direction. Perhaps because she found that funny, Beato snickered.
あとは愛し合う二人にこの部屋を譲る。邪悪なる魔女に恋話は不要でな。退出させてもらおう。
ベアトリーチェ様、ありがとうございます。
礼などいらぬ。こんなのでは償いきれぬほど悪行を重ねておることは、そなたがよく知っておろうに。
良き魔女には感謝を選別とします。今までがどうであったか、そしてこれからがどうであるかは知らない。しかし今この瞬間、あなたは間違いなく良き魔女だ。
おべっかが過ぎるぞ、カグメが。
It's been a while time Kagu since she said furniture.
次に会うときは期待を裏切らぬ悪しき魔女であるかもしれぬぞ。それではさらばだ。
Beato left the parlor and closed the door, and mustering the last of her remaining magical power, she sealed the door. The fact those two had escaped in here would eventually be noticed, and now that the night twilight had been reached, no matter how much they struggled, their inescapable fate had already been decided. However, until that final moment, they should be permitted the time to speak with each other of their love. Okay, yeah, so like I said, she was gonna die, but at least this gives them some time to be alone. The witch poured out all her magical power to protect their time together. so that no one would be able to defile their time alone together until the final moment. Just then, Beato perceived something. Her body had been detected by a magical searching technique. The cruel-hearted witch's furniture had sniffed this place out.
無粋なるは魔女のゆえんか。若き二人に恋を語らせる気もなしとは。
45データ受領。標的称号仙台ビアトリーチェ卿と確認。百魔防御壁を解析。多層防御壁72層、構成防壁および魔法反応走行。100万への狙撃は不可能。410へデータリンク。410データ受領。にひ。じゃあ仙台様を先にしちゃえばいいだけの話だに。大ベアトリーチェ卿、攻撃許可を。
撃ってちょうだい。ああ、急所は外してね。バーバーに聞きたいことがあるの。
410射撃。にひ。
The Chester sisters' gold bow released a golden snake. It crawled down the corridor, starting from the front of the servant room, drawing a soft, serpentine curved trajectory as it made for the parlor. And struck through Beato's chest. Man, this is weird to see her taken down. Gold butterflies gathered, and the cruel witch showed herself there, along with her furniture.
仙台様、二度もの妨害、もはや許されませんぞ。
許されようとも思わぬわ。しかしシエスタ姉妹も腕が落ちたものよ。わらわを仕留め損なうとはな。それも二度も。
Ronovate spoke in a manner fitting for the witch's butler. As she pushed her pain aside, Beato grinned and spoke back.
申し訳ありません、仙台様。急所を外せとのご命令です。ご指示があればすぐにでも貫きますとも。ピアスの穴でもおへその穴でもお好きな穴を。にひ。
The gold snake that had shot through Beato grew even longer, drawing a helix like a morning glory vine, and awaited its next order. It was ready to pierce a vital spot as soon as the merciless witch told it to.
残忍にかけてはわらわも一歩を取るそなたが急所を外させるとはどういう風の吹き回しか。新しきベアトリーチェ。
聞きたかったのよ。どういう術で逃れたのか知らないけど、私たちはあんたを仕留めたつもりでいたのよ。そのまま隠れていれば逃れられたもの。どうして危険を冒してまた現れたの？まさか若い二人をかばうためだけに戻ってきたわけ？
さーてなあ。
さっきだってそうよ。どうして恋人たちを蘇らせて再会なんて甘い真似を。聞けば聞くほどにあなたは私なんて足元にも及ばない邪悪の権下。そのあなたがどうして急にそんな生ぬるいことを始めたのかって、それを聞きたかったのよ。
残忍ゆえにわらわは気まぐれなのよ。それを問うことに意味などあろうか。
シエスタ姉妹、ヌエ。
When she ordered that, the gold snake that was curled into a helix and suspended in space moved as fast as a real snake going after its prey, and pierced Beato's body multiple times from the front and back, its golden tail drawing an X shape. As the ruthless witch had ordered, it drew a cross-stitch through Beato's chest. The gold thread made a squeaking sound and tormented Beato. Rather than a gold snake aiming for its prey, it waited for orders in midair, as if it was a sewing needle ready to sew Beato.
あんたに限って気まぐれなんてあるわけがない。あんたのことを聞いたわ。 そして知ったわ。あんたは私ですら足元にも及ばない邪悪の権下よ。私はそんなあなたに実にふさわしい後継者だと思ったの。なのにあなたは邪魔ばかり、ぬるいことばかり言って私を呆れさせる。何があなたを変えたの？1000年間邪悪の限りを尽くしたあなたに、その1000年を翻すような何が起こったのか、それだけを知りたくて生かしたのよ。
知りたくばそなたも1000年を費やすがよいぞ。
Is it simple to say it's Badler? It's just Badler. Maybe love is making her soft.
ぬえ。
Beto's chest was once again sewn with a golden cross stitch. It tightened once again, squeezing fresh blood from Beto's chest. The intense pain it caused ran in conflict with its beauty to the eye.
あんたもひょっとすると死ぬと消えちゃって死体が残らないタイプかもしれないわね。だからあなたをゆっくりと殺すわ。でも私の質問に正直に答えられたら楽に殺してあげる。先代様にぴったりの華麗で豪華で優しい死を与えてあげる。水を張りバラで埋めた棺桶に沈めてあげるわ。素敵でしょ。それでも話せないの？あなたの心変わりの理由。
聞かれたことを答えぬもまた邪悪なる魔女の優越よ。
ぬえ2つ。もちろん答えてくれなくていいの。だってそうやっていじめてるんだもの。無限の魔法は本当に素晴らしいわ。思えばこの世はすべからく有限。人の世に無限などありはしない。それは神が無限であるがゆえに人の世を見下すため全ての無限を取り上げたからよ。なればつまり無限の力とは神の力。遊べば遊ぶほどにさらに楽しい遊び方を見つけられる素敵な力。その力を1000年も思うがままに使い暴れ回ったあなたがなぜ今頃になって心変わりをしたの？まさか私に譲ったから惜しくなってとかじゃないわよね。
惜しいものか。そなたがそうだと信じている無限の魔法など魔法にあらず。真の魔法の力とはそなたなどでは到底至れぬ深淵にあるのだ。
それに気づいたから？
This music is so uplifting.
それは何？
それに気づけず1000年をさまよえ愚かな魔女よ。
ぬえ、今度は3つ。
They continued embroidering Beto's chest with the golden thread. It tightened even more, causing Beto more and more pain.
まあいいわ。死に損ないのババアが何を達観したかなんてもう興味も何もない。もう飽きたからあっさり殺してあげるわ。あんたを殺せば客間の結界は解ける。そしたらカノンとジェシカもたっぷりいじめ殺してあげるわね。愛し合う二人を同時におもちゃにできるなんてこれは楽しそうよね。 せ。
Without missing by a millimeter, the gold sewing thread shot through Beto's heart. That intense pain was worse than all the pain before that put together. Beto finally remembered the actual feeling of dying, which he'd forgotten over 1,000 years. Wow, but she couldn't die. She must not die. If she died, the two in the parlor would be handed over to the brutal witch, so she definitely couldn't die. She resolutely refused to die.
新しきベアトリーチェよ、頼みがある。客間の2人の仰せは短い時間のものだ。砂時計で測れる程度の時間でカノンは冥府へ消えるだろう。その程度の時間、どうか許してはくれぬか。
いやよ、愛し合う二人を引き裂くのって楽しいんでしょ。あなたが言ったわ。だから私やってみたいの。
ならばその快楽、貴様に味わわせるわけにはいかぬ。楽しいぞ、恋人たちを引き裂くのは。
そうよね、きっと楽しいわよね。だから邪魔しないで。もっと縫え縫え縫え縫え。
にひ410了解。
The merciless gold sewing needle sewed its golden thread through Beto's heart over and over again. However, no matter how much it tightened, that heart did not stop.
まだまだ、この程度では足りぬな。この程度では死んではやれぬ。
何をしてるの？このババアのおしゃべりを止めなさい。早く殺すのよ。
殺してます。何度も心臓を縫い止めてるのに。
Is this true magic right here?
こいつの心臓止まらないんです。
あんた不死身なの？
まさかそなたに無限は譲り渡した。鼓動を刻める数など残すところもたかが知れている。だがそれを一つ余計に刻むことでこの部屋の二人にわずかでも長い時間を与えられるなら、その程度の抵抗を永遠に続けようぞ。
Her redemption arc is complete. This is amazing.
縫え。こいつの心臓が動きを止めるまで縫い続けよう。
なんでこいつ死なないの？ありえない。心臓を縫い縛ってるのになんで止まらないの？ならいいや、心臓を内側から爆破してやるに。かわいそうに逆らわなければ綺麗に死ねたのに。
The gold needle and thread made round trips over and over again as they spoke, and still, Beto didn't expire. The barbarous witch was at last starting to turn pale at how unnatural this was.
お前一体何者なの？
そなたにはわからぬだろうな。わらわにわからなかったさ。だがな、どうやらこれが本当の魔法というものらしいぞ。つまりわらわは今こそなった。本当の魔女になった。
信固定。新刊準備よし。爆破。
Is that it? Oh, it seems so. There was a deafening sound, and gold leaf and a flutter of gold butterflies were scattered around the area. Maybe because she achieved the true witch, maybe she won't actually die? Beato's chest had opened wide from the inside. I refuse to believe that that's it. From that, gold butterflies and gold leaf erupted, staining the surrounding area gold. Then Beato's body crumpled, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. She crumpled and sank down to the floor. However, in the air, a gold heart tied by gold threads floated and continued to beat.
化け物だ。
When the Chester sisters saw that, they fell on their behinds in shock. Somehow, even though Beato had become nothing more than a heart, it still kept beating, continuing to protect the barrier to the parlor. It was an immeasurably immense magical power, impossible to measure. In other words, infinite and endless.
無限の魔女は私でしょ。なんでこのババアこんなになっても生きてんのよ。シエスタ姉妹、あの心臓を砕くのよ。早く。
無理です。申し訳ありません。私たちにはできません。
無理でしょう。何人たりともあの心臓を打ち砕けはしません。竜王陛下の兵士風情ではとてもとても。
なら無限の魔女である私になら打ち砕けるということでしょう。私の力は神の力だもの。
恐れながらあなた様の力ではベアトリーチェ様の無限には傷一つつけられません。
それはどういう意味？
I like how he kind of like italicized Beatrice, saying that she's Beatrice, even though she's not the Endless Witch anymore, she's still Beatrice.
影を知らずして光がないように、有限を知らずして無限もまたなし。ベアトリーチェお嬢様の真の無限の力の前に、あなた様の脆弱な魔力ではと。
何よそれ。
The cruel witch stepped back in surprise. It was more transparent than a lace curtain, but Beato's form, no, Beatrice's form, was still standing there. Even after taking on this wretched appearance, she would not allow evil through that door. At that time, a shadow just as faint as Beatrice stood behind her. It was Canon.
ベアトリーチェ様、ありがとうございました。このご恩は忘れません。
恩の数が恨みの数を超えたら、その言葉をもう一度聞こうぞ。もうよいのか。
はい、本当にありがとうございました。そしてベアトリーチェ様ももう大丈夫です。どうかお楽になさってください。
もうよいのか。
何よ。なんであんたたちは先代のババアをベアトリーチェと呼ぶのよ。ベアトリーチェは私の名前でしょ。新しき黄金の魔女、そして無限の魔女である私の名前のはずよ。
無礼な。ベアトリーチェ様の名を語るな。
Wow, and Canon has definitely reversed his opinion. He hated Beatrice, now he's indebted to her.
恐れながらベアトリーチェ様の名は無限の魔女を完せられるお方が
Wow, did they actually defeat
名乗
her?
られるべき。
Because now Beatrice is the actual Endless Witch? Now Ava's gonna be stripped of her power?
今や先代はあなた様を指すものでございますよ。
This isn't gonna end happily. I know it's not, but I'm gonna pretend it will.
さらばだ。かどうせすぐに出会うさ。新しき悪夢で。
新しい夜の悪夢にて、再び、ベアトリーチェ様のもとも、これで、失礼いたします。
Canon's form grew faint, and he disappeared into thin air. After watching him go, Beatrice's form also grew faint, and before disappearing, it slumped over onto the floor. Then there was a splat. The golden heart, which had floating in midair, had lost its sparkle, become blood-stained flesh, and fallen to the ground. How frail it was. It was ragged and full of holes. But until just now, it sparkled so much, and it continued to beat forcefully. That heart still barely managed to beat. However, it was only a matter of time before it stopped. Beatrice, whose form had become fragile and faint like incense smoke, lay on the floor, steadily watching her own heart. Then the cruel witch could be seen.
何が無限よ。現にこうしてぶっ倒れてるじゃない。有限のある無限なんて、そんな矛盾存在するわけもない。これがあんたの魔法の限界なのよ。有限は無限に劣る。
Beatrice no longer had the energy even to respond. No, in fact, it was doubtful whether the words of the cruel witch even reached her ears.
あんたが本当に無限の魔女なら、立ち上がってみなさいよ。どう？立てないでしょ？どうして立てないと思う？あんたが無限の魔女じゃないからよ。
The merciless witch poked Beatrice's heart with her fingernail. Beatrice had no words with which to respond to that provocation. However, instead of words, she returned a single expression. It looked insulting only to the cruel witch. Because she had gently curved her mouth and smiled. Footsteps were approaching that place. There was no way she could mistake them. That boisterous noise of shoes against the ground was the sound of Badler's footsteps. Yay! Is this him realizing, like, she tried to do good?
偉そうなことを言っても、わらわはこのざまよ。そなたの言う本当の魔女というのを、わらわなりに頑張ってみたぞ。
ああ、見てたぜ。
なあ、これでわらわは魔女になれたかな。そなたの対戦相手の資格、できたかな。
ダメだな。
Oh! Badler said that unbelievably bluntly. Taking a painful breath, Beatrice saw that, and sneered at herself, as though she should have expected it.
本当の魔女への道は、まだまだ険しいな。だが、わらわは屈しぬぞ。そなた、わらわの苛波に決して屈しなかったように、必ず、本当の魔女になって、そなたの対戦相手に、認められて。
ああ、ダメだな。
No goddamn good at all.
全然ダメだ。お前は俺の対戦相手じゃない。
The brutal witch raised her foot high. Below it was Beatrice's frail heart.
死ねよババア。ぐちゃっと潰れて、それでも無限が示せるってんなら示してごらんなさいよ。魔女は私よ。黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェは私なのよ。死ね
ー。ああ、ダメだ。全然ダメだ。
Oh, is he saying that she's the opponent? What is going on here? All right, guys, so that will do it. Sorry to end it on such a cliffhanger, but I've been playing for quite a while. This is going to be a long episode, and I have a feeling that the next episode is going to be the last one for this chapter. But man, oh man, this was awesome. Like, between the Canon Jessica reunion and Beatrice just like having that redemption moment at the end, that was so cool, with her like becoming the Endless Witch. And it seems like Battler is declared his real opponent is probably going to be the Eva-trice, and maybe fight her. Maybe with Beato's help, maybe with Ronove's help, maybe with Vergilia's help, I don't know. But like I said, I imagine that it's going to wrap up next episode, and I'm very excited to see how this is going to end. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Nana, Sparky, Dumbass Loser, Tequila Mockingbird, Puncake G, Derek Nickel, Harry Gazif, Asborn Kennedy, and Icognito.